This is Thursday, October 12th, 2023. This year alone, the State of Israel has killed over 200 Palestinians. Not militants, I'm talking about civilians, people who have done nothing wrong, largely women and children. This is part of its ongoing military occupation of the lands of the West Bank, of the Gaza Strip, trying to take the land away from the indigenous Palestinian people and give it to their own people, to their own citizens, their own settlers. This is modern-day colonialism. It did not die out in the 1800s or 1700s. It's alive and well in 2023. The ongoing killing, though, of Palestinian civilians has reached a fever pitch this year. Highest level in over 2 decades of killing of civilians. And this has really created bad conditions and a lot of tension, a lot of ill sentiment toward the Israeli government. In addition to that, we've got increasing numbers of illegal raids on Palestinian holy sites, mostly by settlers, religious fundamentalists, often flanked by Israeli police forces or the IDF. We have seen sharp increases this year in violent attacks on Palestinian farmers and people just living out, minding their own business, attacks by these colonialist settlers. And according to Haaretz, which is the longest-running newspaper in Israel, one of the largest papers, the direct responsibility for what just happened this last week, the Hamas attack, Israel's papers themselves say this is the direct responsibility of Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, and his far right-wing government's actions, the most right-wing government in the nation's history. After years and years of peaceful pleas falling on deaf ears, not only the deaf ears of the Israeli government, but also the international community, which is quick to make some, tisk remarks, some UN resolutions, humanitarian rights organizations writing their things, but no substantive change has happened. But with this last year's vast increase in the number of violent attacks and killings of Palestinians, what we saw was that a faction of Palestinian militants said, no more of this peaceful stuff. We're going to use the same violence that has been used against us. We're going to do it back to them. And they did it in one big, bold, horrible, terroristic attack against Israeli citizens. Using the same tactics that were used against them, now they've used it back against Israel, and it's global news, whereas all of the attacks up until this point on the Palestinian civilians have not merited much attention in the mainstream media because it's so common. It has been going on for so many years now. Now, in response, what we have seen is that Israel has engaged in unbridled, unrestricted acts of terrifying retribution, bloodthirsty vengeance, not just against these Hamas militants, but against the millions of Palestinian civilians who are trapped in the largest open-air prison on earth, which is what the Gaza Strip is. Because they cannot leave, they cannot travel outside. It is one of the most densely packed areas on the entire planet. In the last week, Israel has bombarded the Gaza Strip with hundreds and hundreds of airstrikes. They have murdered over 1,200 Palestinians in the last 4 or 5 days, 60% of which have been unarmed women and children. In addition, we've got thousands upon thousands more who have been maimed and are dying as we speak and cannot get medical care. The United Nations, as a result of all of this bombing of entire apartment complex, United Nations has reported that at least 300,000 Palestinian civilians have been displaced by Israel and are now homeless. And that number is skyrocketing. Israel has cut off all access to food, to water. They've shut off the water to the Gaza Strip. They have cut off electricity, gas. They are restricting medicine so that it can't be taken into the Gaza Strip. Israel has bombed hospitals. It has killed medical personnel, ambulance drivers, nurses have been killed. People trying to treat the wounded are being killed. This is a brazen act of ethnic cleansing, and it is playing out right before our eyes. This is the kind of thing you read about in history books, you hear about in movies. Well, it's happening right now. Israel says that it intends to keep this going until it has reduced the entire Gaza Strip to rubble. Because most of the buildings and the homes are made out of concrete. They're just going to level everything. The result, the goal here, is to leave the 2 million people who live there homeless, and they can't leave. To make things worse, in order to increase the effect of the misery on the civilians, to increase starvation and suffering, Israel today, they bombed not the Gaza Strip, they bombed Syria. They flew their jets in and they hit the major airports in Syria to try and shut them down because humanitarian aid and medicine was coming in from the international community, and they don't want that delivered. This development comes as Israel is preparing to send in thousands upon thousands of ground troops into the Gaza Strip to further commit slaughter, because they do not distinguish, they do not differentiate between unarmed Palestinian civilians and gun-toting militants. There is no difference. We saw that when they killed over 1,500 civilians back in 2014 in a 2-month period. The world must hold Israel to account for its actions. The anti-Arab, racist government of Benjamin Netanyahu, Smotrich, and the others must be removed from power. It's that simple. The people of the world have to speak out in defense of the dying and the helpless, or we're not humans. Where is the humanity? It is true that this faction, a relatively small number of militants compared to the entire population, they did carry out terrible acts against Israeli citizens on that day, October 7th. But the actions of those militants does not justify the powerful Israeli government, a nuclear power. It doesn't justify the barbaric acts of bloodletting and vengeance against an unarmed civilian population that has not lifted a finger against Israel. And if you want to think of this in a sinister, conspiratorial way, think about this. Today it came out from Congressman Michael McCaul, who is an ally of Israel. U.S. Congressman Michael McCaul, who is the chairman of the U.S. House Foreign Affairs Committee, he said that 3 days before Hamas attacked on the 7th, the government of Egypt, believing that this attack was going to happen, warned the government of Israel. But Israel didn't do anything different. They didn't do anything to prepare for it. And so there are plenty of people, myself included, and I have even seen at least one Israeli soldier talking about this, expressing the same idea in a video, that the extremist government there in Israel, which has been waiting for an opportunity to justify moving forward with Netanyahu's controversial plans to seize not little sections of the West Bank like they've been doing, but grab the entire thing and annex it. Remember, Netanyahu, as soon as he came to power, that's what he tried to do, and he had to walk back because of the outrage from the international community. He's been wanting to go forward with this, and so they needed something, some excuse to justify taking actions that otherwise they could not get away with. And so, based on the testimony of McCall and the history of Netanyahu, the way he operates, there is good reason to believe that Netanyahu knew these attacks were coming, and he did nothing. He let his people get butchered in order to have the pretext he wanted to be able to go in and take care of this agenda of annexing the West Bank, trying to ethnically cleanse Gaza for the sake of the colonialists, the settlers that have been slavering over this land for years now. I add my voice to the thousands of voices of not just non-Jews, but Jewish peace activists, people of conscience all around the world who are expressing solidarity with the editors of Haaretz, who are saying the same thing. We demand that Benjamin Netanyahu and his crazies be removed from power. He And his extremist administration is directly responsible for the atrocities that provoked Hamas to begin with. When you put your boot on the throat of children, don't be alarmed when their fathers fight back. That does not mean that we have to agree with what Hamas did. I don't agree with it. I don't agree ever with killing civilians. Even if Israel has been doing this for years, I don't support retribution, revenge, killing against other civilians. We don't have to agree with the actions of Hamas in this instance to join our forces with the millions around the world that are demanding that we finally bring an end to the deplorable conditions that Israel has been subjecting the Palestinians to, not just in the past, but especially the present with what they're doing. They're going to kill thousands and thousands more people before this is done. Two wrongs do not make a right. Israel was wrong to provoke Hamas through its killing of Palestinians. Hamas was wrong to kill in retribution. And all of us will be wrong, on the wrong side of history, if we remain silent right now in the face of the apocalyptic terror being perpetrated on the Palestinian population right now by Israel. Join me. We must wage peace, not war.